Ever seen a woke celebrity squirm? That's what happens when they face off with Piers Morgan, the one interviewer who refuses to tiptoe around Hollywood's sacred cows. Curious to see who gets shut down next? Piers raises a provocative question about gender in sports, asking if Erling Haaland, a top male soccer player, could simply identify as female to play in women's leagues. He uses this example to highlight what he sees as unfairness in allowing biological men to compete in women's sports.
Can Erling Haaland, if he says, I now identify as a woman, play in the Norwegian national women's team?
City.
Massive.
He's the best striker in the world. He's 6'4".
Yeah.
He's a massive beast. He scores goals every 10 seconds in the men's game. Are you happy?
If he suddenly decided to become trans, to go through all of the horror.
Actually, you don't have to go through anything.
Just self-ID.
No, you go through nothing.
He self-identifies as trans. He deals with all of the pushback on social media, the death threats, everything that he's going to get as a result of that, and then says, I want to become a woman, I want to identify as a woman. Then, you know, the team would be able to legitimately make a decision as to whether or not that was the right person.
That is the Megan Rapinoe position right there. You are our Megan Rapinoe. You've just destroyed...
Thanks. You're saying that I'm an international women's soccer player?
No, I'm saying you're relatively irritating, take a position which is always wrong.
The feeling is mutual.
And on this one, you have just endorsed Erling Haaland playing women's football, which of course would destroy women's football. Congratulations. Women's rights nil.
I didn't.
But look.
I didn't know who Erling Haaland is. I didn't know
leave it there.
Power to destroy women's football.
Biological sex matters, right?
Yeah.
And men, born as men, shouldn't be playing women's sport. Rapinoe, free speech. What's wrong with that?
She's allowed to.
And by the way, nothing wrong with me exercising my right to free speech to say it's a bit like Grace's position on Erling Haaland, who she only just heard of. Complete claptrap.
A man who can apparently destroy women's football at the touch of a hat. It's crazy.
It would.
Morgan challenges the idea of self-identification by asking if he could identify as a black lesbian, using this extreme example to question the limits of identity fluidity. His point is to show how unchecked such logic could become absurd.
Are in there for sex crimes. There's actually an advantage, evidently, to identifying as a female, because they never identify as male, because somehow male prisons seem less appealing to them. It's really weird. Anyway, but
is it limitless, this self-identity?
It's not totally limitless.
What's the limit?
When you're talking about International Women's Day, I don't know why we take the conversation around International Women's Day and make it about this.
But if anyone,
there's so many benefits.
Right, but if anyone, according
to
to you, can identify as a woman, anyone can, right?
I don't see a problem with
just literally put their hand up and say I'm a woman.
But it's not an easy thing to do, to go out into
Actually,
the world.
It's very easy.
Very easy.
You might think it's easy to say, but to decide to do that, to say
what
this
does
is
doing
who,
it involve?
Whatever that person decides, but to
Does
go
it
out
involve
into the
makeup?
world and say I don't identify as perhaps the sex I
So
was
why
born
can't
as.
I identify?
It's not,
Okay, why can't I identify as a black lesbian?
well, firstly, I mean, it was.
Well, I'm serious. If I can identify as anything without any need to prove I'm actually what that is, why can't I, on International Women's Day, say I'm Piers Morgan, I'm a black lesbian?
I think taking it to a kind of absurd status.
I think that's
talking about quite a
with
strong
respect, I think that
change.
you'd already opened the absurdity door by saying it is limitless. You can do what you like. Anyone can say I'm a woman. So I simply ask you, why can't I?
I mean, this point kind of ridicules trans people to an extent.
Actually, I think what you said ridicules trans people, because actually people who go through the full process of transition, who actually go through what we used to call a sex change, which I don't think you can muck around with original biology, but those who actually go through surgical procedure over a number of years, I've got great respect for that very difficult journey they go on. I have zero respect for people who just wallop their hand up and go, suddenly, I'm a woman and I want all the rights that a woman has, and I want to compete, say, in sport. I'm a 6'4" athlete, sprinter, swimmer, whatever, who's competed very mediocrely in male sport. I now want to come in and crush women in swimming pools and in sprinting events and break all their records, perhaps irrevocably, just by saying, I'm a woman. I think that is the absurdity you were talking about.
Morgan criticizes Disney's decision to cut dwarfs from Snow White, arguing it harms dwarf actors under the guise of progress. He points out that in trying to avoid stereotypes, Disney has essentially stripped away rare, meaningful roles specifically created for dwarf actors. To Morgan, it's yet another example of Hollywood's woke agenda backfiring as attempts to be politically correct end up hurting the very groups they claim to protect.
Are the 6 dwarf actors who would have expected to have roles in this remake in a massive Hollywood blockbuster who are now not going to have that experience, or the money, or the fame that may have come with it? What is your response to that?
It's not right, because these are roles made for actors of my stature. Roles that aren't ever really given. I can't go out for the Harrison Ford or the George Clooney roles because that's not for me. These dwarf roles are for people of my stature.
Right.
And now it's taken away. I don't feel that's right. And not only that, but now think about the additional stunt actors or body doubles or that. Now you're talking multiple actors of my stature that don't get these major roles. And why? What's the reasoning? Because we're supposed to be progressive and we're supposed to just not view them as that?
After Madonna's altered look at the Grammys, Morgan criticizes her as desperate for attention, which Madonna counters by accusing him of ageism. Morgan stands by his claim, saying her behavior reflects a larger issue of celebrity culture's obsession with relevance. Piers sure knows how to spark debate, tackling issues from gender and Hollywood hypocrisy to inclusivity and celebrity culture. His views are blunt, maybe even controversial, but they do get people talking. Love him or hate him, he's one of the few media figures willing to question the popular narratives head on. His approach isn't about tiptoeing, it's about holding people accountable, no matter how uncomfortable the truth might be.
But B, the constant attention seeking. She was making horrible sexual signs with Sam Smith. She was doing all sorts of stuff as normal,
where consensus, where you reach points of agreement through debate, and you don't try and shame or cancel each other for having different opinions, because that's at the core of this. They call themselves liberals. They're not liberal. Liberalism isn't about an inability to tolerate other opinions. It's the opposite. Right? You're supposed to tolerate and respect others. She even agreed with my opinion, just so that I was entitled to one. That, in that moment, said to me how ridiculous this culture has got. Ridiculous. And I'm delighted that Sharon is now going to be back on Talk TV in the UK, in the show after mine, on a show called The Talk.
So, what do you think? Are his takes refreshing or too much? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you're into these bold conversations. Join the discussion and help us spread the word. Who knows, you might just spark a debate of your own.